There's been several times in my life where I've felt the presence of God. And I've had those spiritual markers in my life that I often go back to remind me that God is walking with me. And this is one of those times. When I was asked to be on the pastor search team, I was reluctant to say yes. But I prayed through this, and I realized that for such a time as this, that this is where God wanted me to serve. As we began this process, I recognized that all the other team members as well felt unworthy to be on this team. But I can honestly say that these men and women that have served on Parkway's pastor search team during this time are some of the most godliest people I have ever had the opportunity to work with. These people pray in ways that's hard for me to describe. None of us, though, felt worthy to be on this team. And then we began to pray through next steps, and we began to receive hundreds of resumes. These resumes were given to every team member, and we would take these resumes home and we would pray over these resumes, and we would watch sermons of prospective candidates. Then we would come back to a meeting with our pile of resumes, and what was a God moment for me was that often these piles were the same for all 8 of us. We had a maybe pile, we had a no pile, and they were almost always the same. There was one resume that when we first received it, we struggled as to whether to even consider that resume. In fact, there were probably some no's on that resume initially. But we decided that we would pray over that resume while we continued to look at all of the other resumes and seek out the man that God wanted, not the man that we wanted. We would narrow it down to 3 or 4 candidates, and we had some Skype interviews with some of these candidates, and it would turn out at the end of the day that these candidates were not the one that God had chosen for Parkway. Then we would go back to that one resume, the one that we weren't sure about, and the one that knew was not going to be an easy choice. So we'd go to some more resumes, and we would look, and we'd find a few more candidates that were promising, and God would again tell us no. And then we would go back to this one resume. Every single time, God would bring us back to this resume. And as we began to pray through this one resume and look at this candidate, God began to reveal to all of us in a very unique way that this was the man that he had chosen to take his church, Parkway, to the next step. We met with this candidate. First we Skyped with this candidate, and then we met with this candidate. We met with this candidate and his wife. These meetings would last sometimes from 3 to 5 hours. Every possible concern that we could ever have were addressed by this candidate. In fact, when we would get through interviewing the candidate, often we would feel like that we had just been ministered to by the candidate. There was one particular night after meeting with the candidate, he had left, and we began to discuss the interview. And there was a spirit of brokenness that came in the room. There wasn't a member on our whole team that was not crying. That God had not somehow spoke to and touched as a result of this candidate. So I'm very humbled. I'm very appreciative that our church has put this big responsibility on our shoulders. But I truly want the church to know that this is not the search team's decision. It is not. It is God's decision. And I feel that we as a team have honored that.